Three men vanished from the most secured prison in the world and were never seen again. No bodies, no evidence, no answers. The FBI insisted that they drowned, but decades later, a shocking letter arrived claiming that one of them is still alive. So, did they die in the icy water, or did they pull off the greatest escape in history? Buckle up, this is the true story of escaping Alcatraz. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to a new episode of Pass with a Punchline. In today's episode, we're going to talk about one of the greatest escapes of all time and how few prisoners managed to escape from Alcatraz. In 2013, the San Francisco police received a very strange letter. The writer claimed to be the mastermind behind the infamous Alcatraz prison escape and that he was still alive. He said he was now in his 80s, suffering from illness and ready to surrender, but only if he received proper medical treatment. Surprisingly, within just 1 hour, the police released a statement and they accepted the deal, promising the best possible care. But the man never showed up and he never contacted them again. Was he simply playing with the authorities? Or maybe he died before turning himself in? Nobody knows. And that's why the escape from Alcatraz remains one of the most brilliant and mysterious prison breaks of all time. This place wasn't just a prison, it was known as hell on earth. Alcatraz prison was built in 1934 on a lonely island off the coast of San Francisco. It was designed not just to punish, but to crush the spirit of all inmates. Most of the inmates were transferred to it because they committed crimes in other prisons. So basically, this prison hosted the worst of the worst. Even guards were not spared. Corrupt or misbehaving officers were punished by being sent to Alcatraz to serve. The island was tiny, 22 hectares, surrounded by freezing waters. Even in the summer, the temperature barely reached 12 degrees Celsius, and the strong tides made swimming nearly impossible. And to add more fear, the authorities spread rumors about sharks and electric eels surrounding the island, waiting for anyone foolish enough to try to escape. The prison itself was built like a nightmare. Cells were small, toilets were exposed, and guards constantly patrolled. Inmates had only 6 minutes of fresh air and 1 shower per week, and meals lasted only 30 minutes. And prisoners themselves did all the cleaning, the repair, and even maintenance, all under a strict shift system, and the treatment was brutal. And prisoners described it as miniature version of hell. So escape was considered impossible. In fact, there were 14 attempts to escape Alcatraz. All failed. Most escapees were either executed on the spot or drowned. But in 1962, 3 men would change history forever. It all started with a prisoner called Allen West, 31 years old. He was sent to Alcatraz after getting in fights in other prisons, and possibly for a failed escape attempt. One day, while cleaning the roof above his cell, he felt a breeze. Looking closer, he discovered a ventilation shaft large enough for a man to crawl through. The bars were old and rusty, and with enough work, they could easily be removed. But West knew that he could not do this alone. And that's when he turned to his neighbor, Frank Morris. Frank had been transferred after his own failed escape attempt from another prison. Allen and Frank were neighbors, just 1 wall between them. And when Allen returned from his cleaning duty, he told Frank about the vent and the escape opportunity. Allen had discovered the idea, but Frank was the real mastermind. Frank was no ordinary man. At the age of 33, he had an IQ of 133, smarter than 98% of people. He was a genius strategist and an experienced escape artist. And together, they started planning. And soon, they recruited 2 more inmates, John and Clarence, the Anglin brothers. And by that, the team was ready. Behind each cell, there was a hidden service corridor used for plumbing and ventilation. The team's idea was simple. Dig a hole through the wall, crawl into the corridor, and escape through the roof. Each cell had a small vent under the sink. just 30 by 20 centimeter, not big enough for a man. But with patience, it could be widened. The walls were pretty old, crumbling after years of sea air and moisture. Using stolen spoons and equipment from the kitchen, the man began digging. They worked every night exactly at 9 p.m. At that time, the prison allowed inmates to play instruments and sing, and the noise of the music covered the sound of scraping the walls. And over 6 months, they shipped away slowly and hiding the debris inside the corridor itself. But they face another problem: how to cover the hole. If the officers see it, the escape would be ruined. And this is where Frank's genius came in. He and John, who worked in the prison's paint shop, created fake wall covers made of cardboard, soap, cement, dust, and painted to match the cell's color. They placed these covers in front of the holes, and guards who never entered the cell did not notice anything. And for a full year, no one suspected them. While digging continued, Frank was working on another part of the plan: how to cross the deadly waters. From old magazines in the prison, he had read an article on how to build a raft and life vests using household materials, and he memorized every detail. The team began stealing 22 raincoats from the prison's laundry, and using heat from workshop pipes, they melted and sealed them into a makeshift inflatable raft and vests. For an air pump, they dismantled an accordion instrument, turning it into a hand pump. To fool the guards during nightly bed checks, they even built fake heads. They crafted them from soap, toothpaste, cement, toilet paper, and real human hair that they stole from the prison's barbershop and placed on their pillows. These dummies looked terrifyingly real in the dark, and step by step, everything was ready. On the night of June 11, 1962, the four men put their plan into action. At 10 p.m., the lights went out, and guards began their usual rounds. Inside their cells, the fake heads lay peacefully on their pillows. Alan West, however, had a disaster. His hole was too small. He had gained weight, and he could not squeeze through. While the others urged him to hurry, he was stuck. So Frank, John, and Clarence continued without him. Imagine being the first one to think about the escape plan, and your teammates proceed to escape without you. They crawled through the corridor and climbed to the roof and cut through the fence. And to their surprise, there were no guards, no searchlights, no snipers. All the rumors that the authorities had created were fake. They reached the shores, inflated the raft using the accordion pump, and waited for Alan. But he never came. And at last, they sailed into the dark, over the freezing water, and heading towards freedom. The next morning, around 7:30 a.m., the guards did their morning rounds. At first, everything seemed normal. The prisoners appeared to be sleeping. But when one of the guards tapped on one of the Anglin brothers' head, the head rolled off the bed. Panic erupted, and by then, the three men were long gone. But Alan was still inside, frustrated and hopeless. And he told the guards everything about the escape plan. Authorities started an immediate search, and they searched everywhere. They found paddles, part of the raft, and a life jacket washed up on the shores. But no bodies and no proof of death. And the official statement: 3 men drowned in icy waters. But many never believed it. And for 20 years, details of their escape remained secret. And 1 year later, Hollywood released a movie about the escape, based on leaked details that the authorities did not want the public to know. In 1975, the Anglin brothers allegedly sent photos of themselves to the police, proving that they're still alive. And then, in 2013, the shocking letter arrived. Frank Morris himself, claiming survival, ready to turn himself in. But he never showed up again. And the mystery remains. Did they die in the icy water? Or did they succeed, living quietly in freedom for decades? And sadly, the man who started it all, Alan West, never made it out. Without him, we wouldn't know the full details of the escape. He confessed everything to authorities afterwards, frustrated and broken. But because of this story, Alcatraz was permanently closed and transformed into a tourist site. So what do you think? Did the man really die in the ocean? victims of cold water and tides? Or did Frank Morris, with his genius mind, pull off the greatest escape in history? This is the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any more ideas for me to cover in the next episodes, leave it in the comments. Until next time.